Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. Yes, I am Richard Dugan, and our program today brings a returning guest to Tell Me Your Story. She was with us some time ago, and she now has a book. It hasn't been 15 years, folks. I've been doing this program for just over 17 years, and I don't know that she was on that long ago, that long ago, but it was a few years ago. Penney Peirce is my guest. She has a new book. Actually, it's a new book. It's an old book. It's the 15th anniversary edition of Frequency, Transparency, and among other things. She's got some other books as well: Transparency, Leapof Perception, and The Intuitive Way. But frequency is the main focus of today's program. Penny, welcome back to the program. It's great to see you again, and to to continue our conversation. There's a big gap there to talk about this whole aspect of frequency.
Well, the book came out in 2009, and it was kind of on the leading edge back then about vibration and your vibes and everything. But now people have been growing and opening and using this. And so it's been a very steady seller the whole way through. And I can't believe it's been 15 years already. But now things have really shifted, and a lot of people are much more acclimated or experienced with using their own frequency dynamics and understanding how to shift themselves out of a low frequency kind of state of being into a much better one. So a lot of evolution on the subject.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that as well. I'm newly published. I finally published my book, Choices. It only took 23 years from the core, if you will, that brought me to this today. And as I am recording it for Audible, I'm thinking, I need to add this and I need to add that here and there and there. And someone says, don't go make notes over there, okay, but leave what you've got alone. Put that new stuff that you've come up with in the next edition. All right, just don't do that. And I'm curious from your perspective. I guess the first question, considering this is the 15th anniversary edition, what is so different, let's say, from the first edition? How has it changed, or what has been added to make it more I don't know, more powerful, more contiguous, if you will, with what's happening to us on that spiritual level, as you kind of alluded to just a moment ago?
Well, the core of the book is the same because it's still very classic, and it has all the processes of how to work with it and all that, and exercises to do. But I've added a new introduction and preface and a whole new chapter at the end. that is the what is happening now, frequency updated. And
Mm.
then 3 new appendices. So I've got, the book has a thing at the end of every chapter. It's where I wrote a kind of a channeled or a direct writing piece, like a frequency message that's written in a different language style. So I've put all those together in one appendix. So if people wanted to just go there and find it, they could go in and read from that. It's a kind of a rhythm or something. I don't know, but it feels different. And then I've taken all the exercises in the book and put those in an appendix as well. So by chapter, so people could find the thing. If I want to do something for my journal today, I can pick this one. And then I've pulled out 60 quotes from the book because the book is very quotable. It has some very profound stuff in it. And people can use that as an oracle, just open it, play with it, and, or get some kind of inspiration for the day. So there's 120 new pages in it. So it's quite a bit expanded.
Yeah. When we talk about frequency, as I often like to do, define terms, what are you talking about? What is frequency?
Well, there's the scientific definition of it. It's, like the sine wave and how many sine waves are in a certain period of time and whether it's expanded or contracted. But what I find is that, there are brain waves. We have the beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma, and all these that produce different states of consciousness. And that gets a little closer to what I refer to as frequency and what most people these days are talking about, but that everything in form actually vibrates. Like a rock is a little slower vibration than a bird,
Mm-hmm.
and a depression is a slower vibration than excitement.
Okay.
Things you can kind of feel the difference. And so some of them, like being agitated or really, revved up, that is not a high frequency. That does not allow consciousness to flow through or you to be in touch with the understanding of yourself as a soul. It gets you into a very agitated state where you can't get through to yourself, really,
Right.
basically. So high frequency is more equated, I think, with like theta and delta waves that are the slower, longer ones, like you would find in meditation. But also you would find with higher emotional states like kindness, sweetness, love,
Mm.
generosity, gratitude. Those kinds of things put you in touch with soul
Mm.
and center you. But things like feeling envious or agitated or deprived of things that push our buttons into negative emotion, those are low frequency kinds of states. So part of what we're doing with learning about how to work with vibration and frequency is to catch yourself when you're at a low vibration, and which doesn't actually feel very good. You can be angry and maybe you feel, strong, but it's not. It's debilitating.
Yeah.
So how do you get yourself recognize, first of all, then get yourself out of these lower states and build a better habit of staying in the higher ones to begin with?
You bring to mind an audio recording that I did with a gentleman by the name of George Adair, who is the founder and the creator of these personal growth programs in Arizona, Delta Vector and Omega Vector. Now they're the same program. They just changed the name after a period of time. Anyway, we sat down in my studio. My gosh, it had to have been over 18 years ago, 20 years ago, or more, because I was still living in Phoenix. But the focus was on sex and the more esoteric, more metaphysical or spiritual aspects. And one of the things that he talked about in that tape, but also in some of the programs, had to do with what you're talking about in terms of the energy or the vibration, the frequency that the two, we'll just refer to them as the two participants creating the continuation of life on this planet. And he said that when you have very aggressive, very angry, very, those kinds of things, kind of like we're talking about, the lower frequency emotions, that frequency affects the cells, the egg and the sperm cells, that when you create a new human being through that process, that now that human being now has that frequency sort of embedded. Doesn't mean that they will always be that way, but that's
Right.
then it sort of explains why some people, especially as children, are the way that they are because of the energies that the parents were in, the mood, if you will, that they were in at the time of conception.
Yeah.
And it really, I think, begs a conversation in that regard because so many people want to. I mean, and again, it's primarily on the female side who have the maternal instinct, and they have this. I don't know if it's in the DNA, maybe it is. They want to be mothers. They want to bring people into this world. They want to raise a child. They want to have a family. I mean, my mother was the same way with my father. They wanted to have a big family, so they had six, and that's where it stopped. Uh, and yet, I'm not going to say that my family and my siblings and I, uh, and the family were necessarily say the Norman Rockwells, you know, the ideal family. But I have to say that I don't know that we ever had any estrangement. I've never, regardless of the differences philosophically, etc., between myself and my siblings, they will always be my siblings, regardless of what they believe, who they follow, etc., etc. Um, which I think goes to the frequencies my parents were in at the time of those six conceptions.
Mm.
Let's start there because I know that you want to talk also about the aspect of these frequencies and how we can change them in our lives. This is not something that is permanent. I mean, maybe there are people who have always have this underlying frustration or bitterness, or I mean, you hear it in their language. How the language will be of that's not bad, that's not bad, or the glass is half empty most of the time. And that's where all of their words come from. They can't say anything positive. They're self deprecating, always putting themselves down and sometimes other people. This seems to me that's a good place to start is sort of at the beginning. Can you talk to us
Yeah.
from that perspective?
Well, I think what you said, especially in the beginning, there is really quite interesting. And I think true that when a soul is coming into embodiment, it's coming in through a field of energy first, and it's attuning to different fields. And sometimes they may be attracted to incarnate into a family that is angry and violent because they've had that kind of karma that they need to work out. So they'll come in through that, accentuated, so that it comes up to the surface of their personality. But I
Mm,
think a lot of these things are formed in the energy body of the soul first, as they come dropping down in frequency to come into the body from their very clear high state. They get denser and denser, and as they come closer to the body, that's where all the emotional stuff is stored. And a mood or a state of being will pattern that energy field in a certain way. And often it will match up with the karma that the person has. But so then as they're born, they may not be angry as a baby, but they may feel frustrated. They may feel like their body's not working right, or that they aren't comfortable, or they can't get warm enough or cold enough or fed enough or something enough. And that will then work out as they get bigger, with being argumentative and disobedient and so forth. But eventually, if they don't need that karma anymore and they're trying to get rid of it from the soul's level, they will grow through it. It's almost, they'll like expand themselves beyond the level of that frequency. And when we do that, and we all do that, we grow beyond our contractions, let's call it. And as you do that, those old ideas just seem like they fade away. Like, was that ever real for me? Did that happen to me? Or was it somebody told me about that?
Yeah.
Like, and you could say it's forgiveness, but I've never quite understood what forgiveness was. And so I finally came to the idea that it's just letting things be the way they are right now. And
Mm.
and then letting yourself be the way you want to be. Like if I can let that person be the way they are at that moment, I can be the way I am at this moment. And I choose my frequency. I'm not on automatic, and I think there's a certain point where we realize that we are denying ourselves freedom by not allowing ourselves to be who we want to really be.
Yeah. I have I'm trying to remember now how many steps it is. I have a 4-step process I went through almost 9 years ago, maybe closer to 10 as we head for 2025, where I got sucked into the whole political thing back then.
Mm.
And it took me 6 months, as I phrase it. It took me 6 months to get unsucked. And I went through these 4 steps. And one of them, though, and it's actually the third one, is what is it that makes you, what is it that you're so afraid of that makes you behave this way, that makes you speak this way? I'm not asking you to change. I just want to understand so that I can put this behind me and move on with my life without you in it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a question that I think that has to come from, first of all, I don't want to say a pure heart, but it's certainly got to come from a humble, loving perspective that you're not asking anyone to change, because you wouldn't want anybody to ask you to change your behavior just because they don't like it. It's like, okay, you need to go inward and find out what's going on inside of you, which is part of that process as well. One of the other steps is I forgive you, but more importantly, I forgive myself for allowing myself to be drawn into this quagmire, or whatever it is that you feel you're in. And I don't know about you. You're probably along the same lines as I'm not a fan of conflict. I don't like the drama. And maybe I learned how to deal with that by walking, or in grade school being bullied, running away, saying, no, I am not going to allow myself physically to be injured. Now, if they want to put gum on the seat of my bicycle so I can't sit down on bicycle home, or they flatten my tires so I have to walk my bicycle home from school, that's no big, that's inconsequential because they haven't hurt me physically. They haven't injured me. But then I even take it one step further from more of a religious perspective, where it says in the New Testament, don't be afraid of the one who can destroy the body, but the one who can destroy the soul. And we won't go into that, but it's like, what's really important here? The mortal coil or body that we reside in, or the immortal solar essence that animates that body, that is always around. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that the soul is eternal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually, if you go into the soul and you start experiencing it, there's a level beyond the soul, which is like a group soul. It's like, or you might call it the soul group, where you have common vibrations, common ideas, common experiences with a lot of different people. And when you meet them here in the physical, you know them, you feel like, oh, wow, we're on the wavelength, but as you evolve and you become more of the soul here in the body, then you let go, you start to find more and more of the soul group coming together as well. So I personally do not feel like the soul can be hurt.
Hmm.
It's beyond that. That's a filter that we have as human beings based on the separation we experience between bodies, between time and space. You're over there, I'm over here, and the outside world is bigger than I am and it can hurt me. But no, it's all one big world.
Yeah.
Everything's in it. And when you start finding higher frequencies, you also start finding unity, the
Hmm.
oneness of things. It's just natural, it just happens. And then you get it. Oh, you get the golden rule. You get why you don't hurt people with nasty words. That everybody is seeking the ability to live in love, share love, play in love, and have our creations come out of that state of it's a kind of a perfect, beautiful harmony, and totally useful, and it's amazing. Why wouldn't we want that?
Exactly. We're talking with Penney Peirce, author of the 15th anniversary edition of Frequency, and you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host of Tell Me Your Story with Penney Peirce, returning guest to our program. It's been a while since we've had her with us. She's a very prolific author, lots of great stuff on her website. And we are going to encourage you to go to her website, which just happens to be, oh, it is. I love these websites. Pennypeirce.com. So easy. We'll be linked to that website as well on our SoundCloud and YouTube channels. And go there and check out the work that she has put together. She's a long time, I should say. You're a you have a few descriptions. A clairvoyant, empath, visionary, pioneer in transformation dynamics. Your intuitive development as well. You're helping people to expand their perceptions. And of course, DreamWorks. One of my favorite titles of one of your works is um, Dreams for Dummies, which I love. I love that phrase. And then, of course, there's another one also. Be the what is it? Is it be the dreamer, not the dream?
That's it.
Yeah. Someone told me not long ago when I was going through some challenging period of my life. They said, Richard, you can rewrite the script. It's not set in concrete, if you will. It's not permanent. You wrote the script from the beginning, but you're the one who wrote the script. So you're the writer. You can change it anytime you want, and that's what I've done because now I have my book out. I'm involved in some other areas of the radio station I work for. I'm doing interviews about my book with other hosts and so forth. Um, Planning on a trip in the fall of 2025 with my wife back to Ireland after quite literally by that time it'll be 13 years, actually 12 years, I guess. Needless to say, it's been a long time. We'd love to move there and live there the rest of our lives. So, whoever's listening, if you could make that happen, we're open, you know. But that seems to also be part of issues that people have, isn't it? That they think that where they are and what they are going through and who they are with, all of that which they are experiencing, there's some permanence to it. And the reality is the universe is not stagnant in any way, shape, or form. Even if you were to come across a stagnant pool of water that's got moss growing or algae growing on top, and it's got mosquitoes nesting in there, and that doesn't last forever because eventually, either A, when the sun comes out, it's going to dry up, or B, when the rains come, it's going to overflow and it's going to send that water going everywhere, and so on and so forth. Is that one of the issues that a lot of people have in their perception, is that things are permanent when in reality that is the farthest thing from the truth?
I think that's one way to say it. I would say that what happens is that we become habituated to things that we are accustomed to, and sometimes in order to get love when you're a little person, you agree with what your parents do and say. Otherwise, you don't get the attention.
Mm.
And so we mistake agreement for love. And then we try to please people, and that kind of thing starts happening. But we start identifying with, well, this is the way my family was raised, or this is where I grew up. And this is the way people think where I grew up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're a real free spirit, you may have left that and challenged it and taken on new behaviors, but somewhere deep inside, there's still that core, almost pre-verbal thing that you adapted to that caused you to think this is the way it really is. And so sometimes people, have a very like a background of poverty or something, and then they become wealthy, but then they lose money or they lose something else because they think they can't have it. It's not always enough reality, and
Mm.
so I think that it's not that it's always fixed, but that our thought patterns become kind of calcified in a way. And we don't try new things. We have so many talents that are just lying there latent and not
Yeah.
coming up. And you have to be a kind of rebel in a way internally, I think, to say, all right, I had those ideas, that's great, but there's more, and I want to go see what that is. And I want to find out things about myself. I'm not complacently just accepting everything the way it was given to me.
Yeah.
So there's that sense of a spark of freedom that we have inside of us that will move you through those fixations of mind.
Yeah. It's interesting that you put it in that fashion. I have been for the last, I'd say, month or so, after finishing this book called The Goal. I always give out the author's name because I think it's a great book from the standpoint that the point that I get from the story, which in this case available on Audible, is dramatized. It's like I'm listening to radio theater, which I used to produce. Um, the message that I got was, just because we've always done it this way doesn't necessarily mean that the way that we used to do it is really working for us. As I've often said on this program, we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that, which lit a fire under me, so to speak, I began taking a hard look at being involved with sales here at the radio station. Now, I have never been involved with broadcast sales in my entire 45 years career, at least not directly. I might have been used by the sales team to encourage people to come work with us because of my capacity, my abilities, and so forth. But I started looking back at my history as a paper boy in high school. I was winning I was winning sales awards and going to Disneyland and SeaWorld and getting this prize and that prize for high sales. Then when my wife and I moved to Santa Barbara, I went to work for this one company that was inbound call sales. And in the last month that I was their top seller, in spite of the fact that I couldn't stand that job. It was just, I hated it. And I was sharing that with my father once over the phone. And he said, Richard, you have nothing to worry about. You could sell ice cubes to Eskimos. And so I thought, first of all, I take my father's words to heart. Second of all, I take a look at my history and success in that area and go, yeah, you can do this because you have.
Right.
And we kind of discount when we don't look back at the successes we've had. Somewhere along the way, we got the message that we can't. And so we don't.
Yeah. And you get stuck in doing them at the level that you first did them at, or a little bit better. But if you took sales and raised its frequency up, it becomes the motivator. It becomes the teacher, the inspired person who gets other people to feel inspired. It's not about selling physical things, and it's not
Right.
about persuading or any of those things. It's about, like you said, just let people be who they are and pick up on the good ideas. You
Yeah,
don't pressure them and tell them what to do, or they won't do it.
exactly.
But if you just give them some honesty, common sense, and that it's better than what they're doing, they'll realize that.
Exactly.
But there is a higher frequency of every like starter job, let's say, um, I mean, I used to do a self-published little newspaper for our small community on a mimeograph machine.
Oh
And
my.
then I worked at a newspaper. Well, guess what? That's writing, that's words, I was a graphic designer. All kinds of things came out of that, which taught me about intuition eventually. Like, how do you design a logo for somebody? Well, it has to represent what the core of who they are is. Well, how do you figure it? Well, you have to use your intuition to get to these things. And so, because when I grew up, you couldn't grow up to be an intuitive,
No.
and so you had to like do it through the channels that were available.
Yeah.
But there's sanity in our paths of growth. And
Absolutely.
I think we have to very much about trust who we are, how the flow works, because our paths in life, we are engineering them along with a lot of other beings that are, everybody helps everybody at that higher level. There's no backstabbing, there's no not succeeding. It's all, you need that? Okay, we'll help you. But we'd like you to do this and you can do that and give it out, and then that'll help us over here, and then that will do that. It's all interconnected. And so I think that there is a sense of trust that comes from realizing that what I need, somebody else needs me to need. What I want to do, somebody needs the effects of what I'm doing. And there's a path of a flow that comes in and out and back and go around, and I'm even given the thoughts of what I need next so that I'll ask for it.
Yeah.
So part of that is this, it's a natural experience, not a heady thought. Like it's an experience of trust, because you know that you're safe. You know that if trusting something, it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking with Penney Peirce, author of Frequency, the 15th anniversary edition, and we're talking with her here on Tell Me Your Story. Frequency is the title of the book, and after 15 years, it's been expanded. We hope you'll go to pennypeirce.com to find out more about the work she does, as well as the library. Actually, there's another phrase that you used earlier that puts together many of these books that you have written. And it's like a collection, and they all are intertwined. You can't, any more than you can separate the various elements of a human being. You cannot compartmentalize the mind, body, and spirit. You can't compartmentalize these books because they're all sort of interwoven in the tapestry that is Penney Peirce, and it's talking about all of this. I wanted to ask you about being an empath.
Mm-hmm.
How do you protect yourself from the incoming frequencies of the outside world? And I'll give you a real brief case in point. My wife is also an empath. However, she has not been able to figure out how to protect herself from the onslaught. We were watching a movie one weekend. She was starting to just feel awful. And she didn't know why. And I said, well, it may not be you. It may be something that's coming in. So when the movie was over, we switched to live TV, and boom, breaking news. And this particular event took place. And as soon as she saw that, and as soon as she was aware of that event, that awful feeling went away because she knew where it was coming from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How does one who is empathic guard oneself without shutting oneself off, so that what they're feeling is theirs and not the rest of the world?
Yeah, it's a very, very important question now, because with the accelerating vibration on the planet, and it is going higher and faster, we're all becoming what I call ultra sensitive, which is part of empathy. What I find is that you have to first develop a very strong sense of your own home frequency, which is the state, I think, of being the soul in the body. I don't have a soul. I am a soul. It's not out there on a balloon somewhere that I have. It is me now, and I'm here. I'm making this life, this body, and this work and reality. Um, and so you have to have a strong sense of that feeling state. And usually, you can identify it in different ways by, like, sometimes I think of playing with puppies or a pink Angora sweater or soft butter or something, just really something that gives a cheerful quality that I find very centering. Other people, it's a fluid motion or it's something else, but it's a way you love to feel, your preferred state of being.
Mm.
And you get a good snapshot of that. And then you practice recentering into it when you get knocked off center. So that's the first thing, is that your preferred state is your reality. And then you can expand that state, that vibration out, and you can allow other people into your ball. You have a huge ball of your reality. And so people who are upset, nasty, murderous, whatever, ignorant, they can all be in there at their own frequencies. But you're sort of surrounding them with yours, and you're allowing them the chance to feel a little higher frequency thing. And if they notice it, they might take advantage of it and something will get through to them. But I'm not forcing my vibe on anybody, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's like a second step. You allow others to be, because you're allowing yourself to be the way you want to be, so you allow them to be the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think there's this feeling of becoming aware of someone being cruel to animals, let's say. And when I do that, I feel what the animal feels. I'm in it. Then I return to my own self and I start to dissolve as much as I can the cruelty in the field. I try to spread light and put it, I know inside of every dark thing, there is light. There's a spark. That's the core of every single thing on earth. And people who are living in darkness or who are doing, harmful things have
Mm-hmm.
forgotten it because they have heavy duty overlays between them and their own soul. They're not experiencing the truth of who they are. So if you accentuate the light in the thing, it will start to grow more. And that's all you can do. The other thing I think is that I do not try to go down into that stuff very much anymore. I try to stay in my own higher level and allow that to come into that higher frequency. If I have to experience it, I try to reframe it.
Mm.
Again, according to what I was saying, is that the upsetting things that, and there's a lot of violence on TV now, and really, it's almost like the subconscious mind is opening up into the film industry, and there's just not much that really I want to watch.
Yeah.
But when you do, then I take a look at it and say, these are people who are not awakened yet. They don't know enough about themselves, and I feel tenderness toward them, and then I'm going to not go into it and experience it all the way. So I
Yeah.
just turn the channel. I mean, and that's like a symbolic thing as well, right? You can turn the actual channel and you can turn your own channel back to your home frequency. And
You know,
that doesn't mean you're not helping people who are suffering. Do you
right.
understand? It's not being callous.
I think that's one of the things that the misperception is that that's how it's perceived. You don't care.
Yeah.
You don't care. And the reality is uh, that I am trying to live by the first rule of survival. Take care of number one. Because if I don't take care of me, I can't help you. And that's what I'm doing. So actually, I do care about you. And that's why I'm taking care of me. So I can be there for you. And it does sound paradoxical. There's no
Well,
question.
then, the more you take care of yourself and you raise your vibration and frequency. Remember, we spoke earlier about you start to become aware of oneness
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and polarity and opposition, which is part of the subconscious mind that's surfacing now and getting highly accentuated in
Mhm.
politics, everywhere, that
Yeah.
whole thing about the ego needing to try and survive and be the controller of everything. That is up right
Yeah.
now because it's on the way out. It's not in harmony.
Yay!
Well, it is. It's not in harmony with
Yeah.
the new reality of oneness, where, the we the people is very much about in harmony with that, not the dictatorships that are happening all around the world.
Yeah.
That's the ego rising and trying to stay in control of things when really it senses its role is changing.
Yeah. And so it's
That's
in
another
fear.
story, but
Yeah. It's in
but
fear. And so
yeah,
fear basically does everything it can to
to stay
stay
in control.
in control.
Yeah, yeah. And once you raise your frequency and you start into the oneness, then what also happens is you don't sense that there's an outside world anymore that's
Yeah.
doing, and you're the victim of it.
Right.
In, in other words, spirit and matter actually start becoming one big reality.
Yeah.
So the souls are right here. We're all in it. The light is in matter, inside in the dark places, even. So we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to get anything from outside. And nothing outside can hurt us unless we also have it in us. So the
Yeah.
best thing you can do to take care of yourself is clear yourself of fear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you help everybody around you because your energy does the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting because I wanted to tie something else into that.
Mhm.
The natural world. My wife apparently has an app of some sort or notification whenever there's an earthquake.
Uh-huh.
And over the last few months, now I don't know whether there are actually more earthquakes than there were months before or years before, or if it's just because, well, now we have the satellites that track it and all of the equipment that's out there to monitor and so forth. But she will, while we're sitting there watching a program, she was, oh, there was another earthquake, and it was here, and it was 7 point or 6 point or 5 point, and usually they were out in the ocean, off the coast of wherever it was. And I sit there and I hear what she's saying, and at the same time, it's like there's a part of me, and I'll be quite blunt, I don't care. I really don't. For one basic reason, there is nothing I can do about it. You telling
Right.
me that this is happening, of what and I would never be so rude as to put it this way to her or anybody else, but it's like, you know there's nothing we can do about the sun rising or setting, the rain falling, the fog rolling in. Here in Santa Barbara we have the marine layer at different times, and
Yeah.
I can't do anything about that. I can't do anything about the snow that falls or the volcanoes. We've got that too. We've got volcanoes under the ocean that are erupting. I mean, I saw one picture of it looked like the ocean was on fire because the lava was coming up so close to the surface. And the list goes on and on, just of nature. So when we talk about our connection, our oneness, how about our oneness with this, specifically with this planet, because this is where we live, and those types of things that are happening? And again, I don't know whether it's only because we now have greater access to that information
Yeah.
as opposed to years before. And so what's happening today was happening 40, 60, 80 years ago. It's just we didn't have the information access to it. Uh, but in terms of our connection to the earth, and again, going back to this issue of frequency, in terms of being an empath and picking up, is the earth putting off a frequency in that regard, or is it getting that frequency? And that's why we're seeing these things happen, hurricanes and tornadoes and on and on. We're kind of creating those things because so many there, even though they're, I think it's a minority, are generating them through that fear-based frequency.
Yeah, it's a really good point, really interesting. I think it's a combination of these things, partly, but the Earth itself is picking up vibrations from deep space. I've dreamed a lot about this kind of cosmic events, or maybe it's solar flares, or all kinds of things that are affecting the planet. But there is an evolution going on and an increase in frequency. So the Earth's vibration is going up. So are all the physical things on the surface of the Earth that are made of Earth, like our bodies. you know, so
Hmm.
everything is evolving. And so that's part of it. But then the people on the surface who are opening up and evolving to higher frequencies, some embrace it like we do. You know, it's like, yeah, let's get ourselves cleared out and get rid
Yeah.
of the fear and the agitation. And others are saying, no, this is too scary. I don't understand it. I'm going to clench and hold my familiarity and my habits and my belief systems to myself, and I'm going to stay this way. And it doesn't let the energy flow through.
Yeah.
So if you took a lot of people on the planet's covering, you know, around the outside and saw them clenching into one big mass, and the Earth is trying to expand, then something's got to give. And so right now, it's like a lot of little things all over the place are popping like little popcorn, you know,
Yeah.
and people are having breakthroughs or they're having accidents
Hmm.
and near misses, or you know, things are activating, heating up literally. and
Yeah.
um and so it's a combination of what we're doing on the surface of the planet to keep energy from flowing, and
Yeah.
a lot of that is how we think we're only doing things in the physical realm. Like you said, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Well, you could if you moved into the non-physical realms and became one with the vibration of the planet and brought help to it, you know, through calling in other beings or whatever we do in those realms
Right.
that helps ease the path of growth of the planet itself.
Mm.
And we can lend our energies to the field of energy, right? We don't do it as individuals all the time. Of course, there are places where we are called upon at times to stand up for something or to say something,
Hmm.
you know, whatever's natural for each person. Like for me, I'll write stuff
Hmm.
about it or I'll volunteer somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm not a person to go to sit-ins or, you know, whatever demonstrations. Um, but, you know, but there are, I mean, some people are doing research into all these phenomena and the weather patterns and, you know, all kinds of electromagnetic things. And so people are doing things about it. But I think if you add energy into the negativity by complaining, by attacking, by worrying, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
It
Penny
adds
Pierce.
to the snags.
Yeah. I hear you on that. Penny Pierce, my guest, the book Frequency 15th Anniversary Edition. This is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, here with Penny Peirce, returning guest to our program. It's been a while and it's great to have her back. I wanted to find out from you, when did you begin to become aware of the gifts that you that have made such a um, significant difference in your life? And then, of course, then now you're sharing that with us through all of the books and the programs that you have and the coaching and so on and so forth.
I think for me, it was a gradual process of one thing opening to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think I had a very strong life purpose that, I mean, I've seen my life review before death, you know, I've seen it and how it was engineered. It's amazing. But, you know, I was writing as a little kid, I was doing art, and I became a designer and a graphic artist, and then worked in more conceptual things. Like I did a thing called social design, which was kind of like, they call it now design thinking, I think at Stanford, where you're solving problems by shifting designs of things, shift the inner pattern so the outer form will show up differently. Um, and all these things were training for me into opening up into higher kinds of gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I started training in intuition development and clairvoyance development and found out I was good at it. And then I found out I had all these special kind of visionary dreams that I didn't realize were anything.
Wow.
And then I studied with mediums and started to have phenomena happen around me and a lot of things. It's just once I opened up, what was supposed to come just started coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, to me, when I grew up in the Midwest, I lived on a farm for a while. I went to one of the last one-room country schools for part of a year. And a lot of, I've been around a lot of different kinds of people in my life and traveled to a lot of countries. And so the sense of humanity was given to me at a pretty early age. And always with animals, always with art. And it just wove together, and one thing showed me something else, and then I put those two together, and there was a third or fourth thing that then came in. It was like an amalgamation, and I just kept on going. I still am, waiting for the next insight, but always hungry and curious about how life worked. And I had I don't know, maybe it's astrological too, you never know, but this penchant for diving down into things and getting to the core. Like, okay, here's the superficial version of it. Why is this illness happening? But in the energy body down below, there's something that came maybe from a past life or from some erroneous idea that I'm holding. And then I could work at that level and change it, and then the physical form would shift. So all these things it was so fun. It was like magic, that way everything worked. And now I'm even seeing that the more high frequency I become in terms of me, the soul coming through without the filter of fear, that things work more easily, smooth, synchronous, coincidences, all these things just kind of fall together. I'll think of something that I think would be interesting to have or do, and then somebody calls and says, "Would you like to have this or do it?" It's like, it's faster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. That's what I'm trying to help show people, is that this is real. It's not magic. You do earn it. You work for it, but the work is just one thing at a time,
Exactly.
one thought at a time.
Well, I know that for me, and this goes back to 2015, and when I got drawn in, as I explained earlier, one of the thoughts that went through my mind was, wait a minute, I already played this game called victimhood. I played this back in the 80s, and I won the game because I don't play it anymore. Because it wasn't even about it doesn't serve me. It was more about there are the things I would like to expend my energy on than this.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was even at one point in my early life, I was 18, 19 before I went off to junior college for 3 semesters. And I remember getting a little angry at the fact that I was legally blind. And I would say, well, wait a minute. The state is the one that labeled me as such. I ride all over town on a bicycle and I do just fine. Never had an accident. That wasn't my fault. And I've only had 2 of those. I'll explain later. But I was, for a very brief time, in that position of victimhood, that the state did this to me. And I was even on public assistance for a short time. I think I was going to getting disability Social Security for maybe a whole year, and then it ended because I thought, no, this I don't need this. And then when I started working, I came to the perspective, the legal blindness, if that's what we want to call it, that's a perceived limitation. It's only a limitation if I allow it to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like I said, 2015, I already played this. What? And I then started thinking, well, things are in cycles. Yeah, but this isn't one of the ones that I want to repeat here. I don't want to cycle through this again. It's a waste of time and energy.
Yeah. You're at a different level on the spiral, right?
Yeah,
around it once, and now you're up here going around it again.
yeah.
And
So now
the
I want to do what
consciousness
you're,
is different.
yeah, I want to do what you're talking about. I want to take my frequency, my vibration, expand that bubble, And again, going back to something that's very important that you mentioned, I'm not trying to change anybody but myself.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I even talk about in my book is that we have the discernment. I will use that word. It's a better word to have in our lives or out of our lives those people that we want. That's a choice. It's always been that way. And what is so fascinating, you talk about that spiral, and maybe I am up a little higher in the spiral, but the people who have been around me the longest, they're either going to draw closer because they like the frequency they're feeling coming from me, or they're going to run as far away from me as they possibly can because they don't like it, because it's not congruent with the frequency that they're living in.
Right.
And again, I am not trying to change anybody but myself.
Yeah, but remember what we said earlier is that a lot of people grow up thinking that agreement equates with love.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's when you start to change and go beyond what you had agreed with them on previously, how life
Yeah.
is,
Uh-huh.
and then they feel threatened because they don't have agreement anymore and they don't feel safe. So what they're not, either they have to change, but they're right, so they can't change, or you have to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember my wife, who the book is it's based upon her experiences with cancer back in 2001. And I remember her telling me that her ex-husband would come to the hospital to see her. And I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, she can have who she wants in her life. But she would tell me how negative he was about the cancer and this and that and the other thing. And I said, I'm not going to tell you not to have him come by. Tell him don't come by because I don't want to hear it anymore. All I'm asking you to do is to consider who you want in your life based upon the choice you've made to live, because that negative energy that he's bringing in, that's not supporting you. It's one thing to be neutral. Hey, I'm glad you're doing better and so forth. It's another thing to be optimistic and positive. Man, I'm excited. I'm with you. I'm going to send you energy and so forth. And again, it's always your choice. You have free will. I just would recommend that you maybe put him at arm's length for a little while until you've gotten through. And she did, and she's still alive to this day, free and clear.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times, though, that is interpreted. The perception on the part of others is that you're shutting people out, when in fact you're just taking care of you, right?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were saying about empaths and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the need to not be in the field of energy of cruelty and so forth. Because if you can't energetically, well, I guess you can always energetically do something, but sometimes the physical part of it is a little overwhelming, and
Yeah.
it causes you to shift off center.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's partly old perception that's a human thing where it's tribal. You want to stay in the group
Yeah.
good graces, so you try to agree with everybody to create harmony. But
And that
that's not
doesn't,
true leadership.
yeah, that does not always serve us real well, does it?
No.
Yeah. Because in spite of the fact they say, well, yeah, but the majority said, and if the majority said to walk off the edge of that cliff, would you? Well, no, because the majority can be wrong too, you know?
It's like the teenager that says, but Susie didn't have to stay home from the party.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, and the experiences that we have, I thought this was an interesting thing that someone said to me. He said, well, tell me about all of the mistakes that you've made. And I said, well, from my perspective, I've never made any mistakes in my life. What I have had are life experiences and learning lessons, learned lessons, if you will.
That is true. That is so
No,
true.
because there's no judgment there. There is just experience. And I
Mhm.
think that as we move forward in our lives, I mean, this is something that's fascinating to me. You talk about the vibration is it's moving faster and faster and faster. And I got to tell, I'm excited about the prospects.
Me too.
You know, and how to best um, how to best assimilate into that frequency and go up with it and speed up with it. I mean, I joke about how my calendar, for example, when we talk about time, my calendar is smoldering because time is going by so fast.
Oh yeah, I know.
When
I
I
know.
was a kid growing up, I used to think, man, I'm glad I was born in 1960 because it's so much easier to figure out how old I'll be at a certain point. And I'm thinking, yeah, when I'm in 20 in the year 2000, I'll be 40, and in the year 2020, I'll be 60, and so and it's like, and I just for some reason I just it was I love those milestones. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Penney Peirce is my guest, so we're going to continue here on the program talking about her book Frequency right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and we're here with Penney Peirce, and pennypeirce.com is the website. Frequency is the book, 15th anniversary edition. Penny, when it comes to the frequency increasing, speeding up is the word I want to use. And of course, I mentioned about time seemingly moving faster. I'm curious because in the spiritual realm, in the immortal realm, shall we call it, there is no time.
Mm-hmm.
Unless that's what we are told. There is no time. Okay, nobody's got a stopwatch going. But in this realm that we live in, there is, or at least there is a way to perceive the passing of events and experiences on a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do you think that there's going to come a day when, we'll just allow the sun to rise and set? We'll still acknowledge that. We'll still acknowledge the full moon to new moon to full moon, that kind of thing. But we'll let go of the concept of time in that there is, a lot of people say there's not enough time in the day, when in reality, there's more than enough time to do whatever you want
Yeah.
because we are eternal beings. And if you want, my wife is even talking, she's in her mid 70s. She's even talking right now about preparing herself for the next lifetime and the things that she wants to do,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
I find fascinating. Please go
Well,
ahead.
I think what's happening is that another aspect of the frequency speeding up so much is that we become, it's almost like we're living in a very vast present moment more and more and more, where the present moment is this big ball around us. It's our spherical moment. And if you expand that, you have more time inside of it, you have more dimensions inside of it, you have more space inside of it. And so that the past and the future gets swallowed up kind of into this one huge, huge, huge present moment. And
Mm.
then everything's available to you. All memory, like when I did my life review, I could go back into each moment. I saw the whole thing and I could see moments where I was doing something 20 years ago and I went into one and I was still there doing it.
Mm.
It was alive. I was alive in all of them. And I'm sure the future ones, I didn't go looking into those, but that they're all there. And that my choices about my own frequency are going to affect how easily things come and go. But
Yeah.
they're all in each moment. And it's hard to understand because we're so, I don't know, inculcated, is that a word? In with the idea of linear time. But
Yeah.
there could be an experience, let's call it, where we have beginning, middle, and end all at once. Like I sometimes have cognition of this shift that may be coming on the earth, but I'm already on the other side of it. And I'm looking back and saying, oh, I see why we had the pandemic. That was a good thing that happened to help people wake up. Oh, this was blah, blah. And I see why these things were engineered the way they are to help with um, more people becoming more high frequency, let's call it.
Mm.
And so I don't know. I think everything's on schedule and everything works.
Hmm.
It's it's functional. It is engineered by all of us in our
Yeah.
from our highest states that we know how to serve everyone. And we're really trying to get the earth to work,
Yeah.
and the
We
fear
are.
part of the earth to
Yeah.
dissolve so that it can work harmoniously and be regenerated and so forth. And at
Yeah.
some level of ourselves, we know this.
Yeah. It
And
makes,
as you come into that present moment, the more you also start to feel yourself as a collective being. It's I'm a me and I'm an us. And the we is doing a lot of this.
yeah.
When I write now, I write with the we. You
Hmm.
know, it's together with all other writers who might be in body or not in body.
Yeah. It makes me think of a song that we play quite frequently at the end of our Sunday and Monday broadcasts, Desiderata. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees, the stars. You have a right to be heard. Um, it goes on and on. And then it says, and no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. So, in spite of the perception of chaos that we see on the planet's surface, especially amongst our fellow humans, uh, everything is in right divine order. And that may seem, I don't know, not necessarily fatalistic, but that may seem uncaring, disconnected, and a lack of
Spacey.
compassion. Spacey, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, it's
But what
not
else are
at
you going to
all.
do?
Well, I think there's order even in things that are not physical. There's order in consciousness. There's order in, higher frequencies of time or higher frequencies of space, you know. And I think that being in alignment with universal law, or if you want to call it that, or the order of the whole cosmos, brings you great health and wisdom,
Mm, yeah.
and eternal, awareness of eternal life, and how what if what I'm trying to say is what a gift to be able to be physical,
Hmm.
to be some of the beings who get to come down here and actually understand what three dimensions are like, and all the the foibles and the pros and cons and the traps and the successes that are offered here to us.
It's often, I've heard it said, with those who are connected, I mean, consciously connected to the other side, if you will, or to the spirit realm, the immortal side of existence, they look upon us who are in physical today as heroes because we have chosen to be here at this time during this phase in human history. And like most first responders, I would say, well, I don't consider myself a hero. I consider myself a participant in the overall um, play, if you will, or script of the planet that wants a better life for everyone. And there will be those, oh, yeah, you're talking about a utopia. No, I'm not. We will never escape the the basic dynamics in relationships, no matter if it's two or 2 million. But we can surpass or go beyond the slowed down frequencies of conflict that we see right now. We, I say that I said this jokingly when the Soviet Union invaded. Oh my goodness!
Ukraine.
Thank you. And I said, if I had the wherewithal, I would get a plane ticket. I would fly to Moscow. I would walk into the Kremlin, telling the people, get the heck out of my way. I would go into where this little guy is, grab him by the ear. I refer to him as a nutball. I say, look, your mother is ashamed of you. This is not the way we play in the 21st century. You are on permanent timeout. I don't want the man killed. That is not, that plays into somebody else's hand. But it's like we have got to stop, I'll call it this foolishness, this incredible waste of human potential. I often wonder what some of these people who have been lost in all these conflicts down through, let's just say, the last 125 years, what they could have contributed.
I know.
Society.
I think that too.
And not just in terms of the economy and this. What about the arts and the sciences? What books they might have written? What things they would have explored? How much further we would have flying cars like in the Jetsons today if some of these people had lived and not had to have been diverted. But I also have to remember, I have to go back to what I said earlier. Everything is in divine right order, and the universe is unfolding as it should. Ergo, yeah, it's that's a wonderful sentiment for us to have, but we also have to go back and recognize, and this is the way things have unfolded.
And I do feel reincarnation so deeply and strongly. So a lot of, to me, those people are back doing what they were going to do.
And to that I say, excellent. When there is absolute hope, and we're going to maintain that, because even though, yes, we will accept, everything is unfolding as it should. That is true too. And so is my desire to increase the frequency and move up that spiral, to do more for more, including myself and my wife and my family. And that, I think the one thing that I try to remind myself more than anything else of is there is more than enough for everyone. No more scarcity mentality.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than enough of everything. You name it, there's more than enough. And that again is another part of that aspect. My God, we're in the 21st century, and we're still afraid that there isn't enough of this or that or the other. And don't give me statistics. You have to start. Our thoughts create our reality. I mean, that's really what you're saying here.
Yeah. And it is coming. My next book's going to be on money and transformation.
Thank you.
And it is really about how money is a force for transformation and what's behind money, what's the core of it, and all of that. So I'm working on that now. So it'll fit in with the series, the transformation series.
And I would think too, you might include in that, if you haven't already thought of this, is how to shift our attitude towards having an abundance thereof. Mm-hmm. That today, the millionaires and the billionaires, I suppose that if the general public could get their hands on them, they'd be castigated. They would be exiled somewhere else, and all of their monies would be taken away. Again, going back, there's more than enough for everybody, and they're doing what they're doing. And if you get the millions or billions, you can do what you want to do. And if you want to do it for benevolent and philanthropic purposes, as I do, go for it. You want to put rockets into the sky like Elon? Hey, look at how our space programs and our exploration has expanded beyond just one agency, NASA, since the 60s, putting a man on the moon. That's incredible. Not to mention the spin-off technologies that we're getting an opportunity to have in our hands, and so on and so forth. Very, very cool time. Penney Peirce is my guest. This is a program we're talking about her latest book, 15th anniversary of Frequency. And this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you for joining us here on the program. Penney Peirce, I want to thank you for giving us so much time here on the program, returning to us. I hope you'll come back when you get your next book about money and all of that we're all looking forward to, because we're in this world. that's what you need in order to do some of the things that we want to do. And if we can better tap into the frequencies that will allow us to do that, to bring more of that into our lives so that we can do more of the things that we'd like to do, then I can hardly wait for your book.
Well, you would never think, and I didn't think when I got a voice in my head, so you're supposed to write about money. And I went, what? That's not very spiritual. And then it's just, wait a minute, get going, and we'll bring you the rest.
Exactly. Well, thank you for being with us here on the program, and we do look forward to having you back again.
It was a pleasure, very much.
And before I let you go, 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. And the first of those 3 is, who is Penney Peirce?
Oh my goodness. I'm like some kind of a weaving of like a tapestry, I think, of many, many threads.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. All right. Second question is, what gets you up in the morning?
My dog. No, actually.
People have said that, believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, uh, what gets me up is an enthusiasm about creativity and what the surprises of the day, really.
Hmm. And finally, what was your best day?
Hmm. You know, nothing stands out like that. Last year I had open heart surgery out of the blue, and no pain, no nothing, but suddenly I was in acute heart failure. And there was something about that experience, although it lasted almost the whole thing in the hospital was almost a month, but something about that entire thing that was like a real standout, almost a day of awakening. And no suffering or pain, no thought of death, just always, I just felt like I'm so lucky. And I just talk about timelines. Maybe it shifted me to a new timeline or to a new level or something, but it was amazing. So what seems bad is often really, really good for you.
Well, it's interesting because it brings up story that I think comes from China, having to do with a farmer and his son and and their neighbor, and the neighbor, would come over, sometimes almost every day, and he would say, "So how are things going?" And so, well, and the farmer would tell them the story of how his son found these horses out in the wilderness and brought them back, and so forth. Oh, well, that's good. To which the farmer would say, "Well, who's to say whether that's good or bad?" And then the next day, not such a great story. My son broke his leg when he was trying to tame the horse. Oh, that's bad. Well, who's to say whether it's good or bad? And the story continues on.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of where it comes from. So who's to say whether it's good or bad? I've got myself I've got myself out of the mindset of duality because I take a look at the cosmos, both the macro and the micro, and I look at how it is doing its thing. Things are colliding and exploding and swirling and so forth, and there's no judgment. And on the microscopic level, the same thing is happening, and there is no judgment. There's only judgment here at our level.
Yeah, that thin veil in between.
Exactly. So I'm just working on kind of maintaining that mindset that, hey, you know what? Everything is just fine. And I do look forward to reconnecting with the essences that were my best friend of 53 years, my eldest sister, and my father, who have already left,
Mm-hmm.
and reconnecting with them. I think my favorite, when I think about it, is my best friend. I have not shed a tear over his passing. I can't. Every time I think about him, I start to laugh because we had so much fun in this life.
And
And
he's still there. They're just in non-physical life.
yeah, and
That's it.
so I'm very grateful for those experiences that I had with him.
Mhm.
I mean, when I think back, our favorite programs were like MASH and the Bob Newhart Show, and so forth. And we would, Stan Freberg had this great double album called The United States of America, the early years, and we would be riffing on those things, whether it was the TV shows or the record that we would listen to, and people would think you guys are nuts. And it's like, okay, that's fine because we're having a blast. And so I'm very grateful that he was in my life. And I'm grateful that you have been in our lives here on the program. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to love. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.